those things are in your business right now. And I think that's really, that's something that's coming for you right now. So when you look at other areas, like take advantage. So now take a look at what could you do. So far this has been playing defense. What would a world where you played offense on Black Swans look like? And I think that's where things get interesting. And what is it we can do to surprise the market? And that's what a Black Swan is. It's going to be a surprise, but of course, because you're the one driving it, you knew all the factors that went into making that kind of to move in the market. All right, today we're going to talk about Black Swan events, and they happen in your business. But for me, the reason I'm talking about it today is because it happened in my personal life, in my home. And if any of you have ever owned a home, you know that the world and mostly water is constantly trying to attack you and wreck your house. And water won in my house recently. And without getting to the specifics of it, the reason why the water won was because the systems around it to keep the water out were pretty poorly designed. And that's not what you want to have. And as a person who's not an expert in plumbing and water design, etc., looking at what it was, I walked by it every day for 7 years, and I didn't notice that it was a problem. But I'm not the expert there. We pay other people to look at that and keep track of that, and we missed it. And that's what a Black Swan is. A Black Swan is an event that happens because it was always going to happen, but you've sort of rationalized that it's not going to happen at all. Made famous by the book Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. And I think his initial example was when you looked at swans, when people who study, wildlife look at swans in Europe, what they discover is all the swans are white. So you get this idea that, oh, swans are white. If you see a swan, it will be white. That's what the predictions have always shown. That's what's going to be true forever. And so we close the book on that and move on to the next animal. However, then you go to, I think, Australia, and you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Go to Australia and people discover, oh, look, there are black swans here. And they realize, oh, honestly, now that you think about it, I could see how, migration patterns and this and that, and with color of the feathers would be different or better in this environment. And all of a sudden you realize that black swans are not only a possibility, but here they are. And, you didn't predict it before, but maybe you could have, right? And so he gets into some more financial related topics about black swans. I think talks about, the stock market crash in the 80s, something no one saw coming. We couldn't have possibly predicted it. And then like the day after it happened, people are saying, well, here are all the reasons why, of course, it was going to happen. And so the analogy I want to make for people is that there are black swans in businesses that people are not paying attention to. And as I wake up with some water in my basement today, I'm trying to think for myself, what are ours, And I think the way you get lulled into a black swan event is you start recognizing problems, but then rationalizing why they're okay. And there's that meme out there of the dog in the at the desk with the flames around him saying, this is okay. Maybe it's not that bad. Honestly, some problems that people have are just kind of subtle and you just kind of get used to them. I always find when we go into a business, or even like when we have a new employee show up, some of the first things that they say are, it's really interesting. We do that. Like, why do you guys do it that way? That seems really like strange. And there's this, 1, 2, and 3 risks about that. Why would you do it that way? And I think a lot of people gloss over the idea that that's really, really valuable input and that maybe we should pay attention to that. And when you don't pay attention to it, the longer it goes, the more you just get used to it. And I can think of a client that, we've worked with the last year or so, where the thing kind of lurking in their business, everyone just got used to. And they even sort of developed a narrative around like, well, that's just, this part of the business is not as profitable as you think it could be because of these factors. I'm like, well, what if those factors were fixed? And really just like thinking about like, what would that be like if things were different? I think people can talk themselves out of it. And so again, go to that beginner learner mindset where, when people come into your business for the first time, new employees, even vendors, people, like challenging the things that you've done, there could be some really valuable things there. And we think about what black swan events are for sure coming. So let's try to be smarter about, the 87 crash here as an example. Let's be smarter and look at, like, what are the things happening right now that are potential black swans, right? And I wrote some down, so I'm going to cheat on some notes over here. But when you think about, the idea that there's going to be, for example, a quantum computing breakthrough in the next, I don't know, however many years, 5, 10 years. If you're not planning for what that does to your business right now, then when it happens, you're going to be totally unprepared and have no idea what to do about it. And you're going to be playing catch up while the few people in your market who paid attention to it might actually have something to offer there. And especially, I think the one that we've talked about here before is certainly the idea of security protocols around data and internet security are going to have to get different quick. And hopefully we have some runway to take care of that. But if you've got something that's encrypted and you're satisfied with its encryption, then when quantum computing comes along, you're going to be in trouble. That's a sort of an absolute. And then we look at, the AI revolution. We talk a lot about here on the podcast. And in a way, a lot of the articles I read right now are that it's reaching an asymptote. It's petering out. There isn't really, this is as far as it's going to get for a while. That may be true. I also think that the MIT study on some huge percentage, 90+% of AI projects failing, has a lot to do with what you picked and other things kind of upstream from that, like how bad your data is. Did you pick the right problem? Do you know what you're measuring? Do you have actually anyone competent doing the work for you that knows how to do that kind of work? But I feel like, the idea that an AI black swan is coming for your business is true in just about any business you're in. I think certainly if you're in anything that involves, any sort of software or technology business, if you haven't, I guess everyone has at least tried something. And if it hasn't worked, my advice is to go back to the drawing board and find something else, because you have to keep innovating. In fact, I was on a planning meeting for a client yesterday for like a 3-year plan. And part of the plan is to keep track of what AI is doing on like a monthly basis from a board level, just to see if something new has come along. Because the idea, if we're here, we are sitting in September of 2025. The idea that September of 2026, something brand new and mind blowing has come out. If I were to say that, my guess is most people would say, yeah, probably better than 50/50, right? There's something brand new and mind blowing that changes the way business is done in general comes out. And business didn't used to move that fast in 70s or 80s. I was like, well, maybe a black swan is, I think at one point IBM said there's a global market for 5 computers, right? Is that the right number? And they turned out to be just marginally wrong about that. So, keeping an eye on what AI is going to do to your business is absolutely something that you're going to need to keep track of. Now, here's one I think could be really interesting. This for me is the water issue, and that is cyber attacks are always escalating. And guess what? Now they're AI powered. So all the things that you're looking at in your business around security and protection around your data and systems and your personal information, all that kind of stuff, it just got more difficult. So the idea that looking at where your risk points and your fault points are in your business for technology, just got more, I was going to say interesting, but just got more difficult because now everything's going to be AI powered. And keep in mind, some of that has to do with phishing. So the idea that, some of the psychological attacks that used to happen could now be AI driven and automated and at scale. One of the easiest way to break into a company is to call the front desk and ask for the password. Pretend you work for the company and ask for the password. That works apparently. So like be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. Also be on the lookout for things like for something like with AI, how is deep fake technology going to affect your business? It's always like an escalating cold war around that where, does the technology that's out right now, does it fool anybody? And the answer is, put it this way, it's going to fool a few people. So the idea that some kind of deep fake hits your business from a technology point of view, something to think about. Again, going back to my personal example, I've been thinking a lot about what are the risk areas. Like I'm not a handy guy, surprise, in technology. I'm not a handy guy. And so I started thinking about like, well, let's look at drainage and the roof and, other, the sump systems, all that kind of stuff. Those are things I have to deal with. I should have been dealing with this whole time, and I've been ignoring, and have rationalized. Oh, there hasn't been something. so far there's only been white swans. And as soon as that black swan shows up and, we realize there's a crack in the chimney or something, it's like, oh, I guess, now that you say that, that makes sense. Those things are in your business right now. And I think that's really, that's something that's coming for you right now. So when you look at other areas, like take advantage. So now take a look at what could you do. So far this has been playing defense. What would a world where you played offense on black swans look like? And I think that's where things get interesting. And spend more time on. It's what is it we can do to surprise the market? And that's what a black swan is. It's going to be a surprise, but of course, because you're the one driving it, you knew all the factors that went into making that kind of to move in the market, whether it was data or a piece of software or a new combination of markets or ideas or products. That's the part you control. When I think about like a football team, you know offense knows where they're going, right? Defense, by definition, has to react, and they can try to contain and push and pull, whatever. But offense is kind of where the fun is, because you're the one, what's your trick play? And so when we think about what's the thing you could do to surprise the other team, to surprise the market, right now, I think your greatest opportunity is to do something that can move quickly in the software and technology space, because like never before, the ability to build and test something quickly using AI tools is only accelerating, right? And so, from our side of the business, there are things you need to worry about, how it scales and security and privacy and all kinds of other things that go with software, right? That's still going to be out there. But the idea that you could try to build something, try to come up with something that's like a disruptor, uh, now is the time, and it's only going to get easier as time goes on. And what you don't want to be is the one who's on the other side of that. So let's all sit around and start thinking about, let's make a black swan, right? Let's be Australia. If I got that comment right, let's be Australia and come up with the black swan that surprises everybody, because you're the one paying attention to all the data. You're the one paying attention to where the cracks are in the foundation. Let's go make a move there. Thanks for listening to the Digital Transformist. This is Mike LaVista. And if you like that content, subscribe so you can get notified of new content when it comes out.